So following up from the Supreme Court's lack of involvement in what was going on in Texas, that was bad enough because that meant that SB 8, which not only criminalizes abortion after 8 weeks, but also deputizes basically anyone across the country who wants to become a bounty hunter and track down those who helped make an abortion happen and get paid $10,000 for it, could stand. Now it's worse because the Supreme Court has gotten involved and they're still letting it stand. So there was a vote 5-4 with Chief Justice John Roberts joining the court's 3 liberal members in dissent. Oh, isn't that weird? Like all the Supreme Court justices that Trump put on the court just decided to let it stand. It's so weird.
Yeah, funny how that works, right?
Yeah, Jackson, yeah. I heard that Kavanaugh wouldn't do this, and Amy Coney Barrett, she's not some kind of religious zealot who's gonna try to get rid of Roe v. Wade. Whoops, weird. Oh. Anyway, let's give you the specifics though, because there is a little bit of nuance to this. The Supreme Court has got involved, but it is possible that this will not be the last time they get involved. So what actually happened? The majority opinion was unsigned and consisted of a single long paragraph. I mean, why put a whole bunch of time into it? It's only millions of people's reproductive rights. It said the abortion providers who had challenged the law in an emergency application to the court had not made their case in the face of, quote, complex and novel procedural questions. The majority stressed that it was not ruling on the constitutionality of the Texas law and did not mean to limit procedurally proper challenges to it. So apparently these people just weren't being proper enough. But anyway, what does that mean? Well, we're gonna give you a little bit of some of the dissents, which there were several. So Sonia Sotomayor said the court's order is stunning. Presented with an application to enjoin a flagrantly unconstitutional law engineered to prohibit women from exercising their constitutional rights and evade judicial scrutiny, a majority of justices have opted to bury their heads in the sand, which is, it's a great image and it's exactly what they're doing. She goes on to say the court has rewarded the state's effort to delay federal review of a plainly unconstitutional statute enacted in disregard of the court's precedents through procedural entanglements of the state's own creation. The court should not be so content to ignore its constitutional obligations to protect not only the rights of women, but also the sanctity of its precedents and of the rule of law. So what does all this mean? It means that what Texas did, which is so underhanded and kind of cowardly, but also it's like, clever, I guess, is they're not saying abortion's illegal at 6 weeks. And if you get one, we're coming for you, or we're coming for your doctor, or anything like that. Because that clearly is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has been very clear about that. And maybe, although not necessarily, even this Supreme Court wouldn't allow it. What they're saying is, we're not coming for you. Other people are coming for you. We're not a part of it. So you can't challenge us in court, which is how normally these sorts of things are challenged. That's the novel procedure of it. And everyone knows exactly what Texas is doing here. Everybody knows, and they know more importantly what the effect of this strategy is. The Supreme Court is playing dumb, saying, we need time to figure this out and all this. So, and even though they could have that time to rule on the constitutionality while temporarily blocking the order so that women have their rights, they're just like, well, we'll think about it and we'll let it stand while we do that. Jackson, it is so underhanded. Like, I feel like if you're gonna strip people of their rights, at least be willing to admit that that's what you're doing.
Well, but then it wouldn't work. You know what I'm saying? It's all about making it work. I think what's important here is to show or to look at how litigation is an eternal process. There's always loopholes to get around. There's always loopholes to be created, and there's always some type of slick way to get away with things. And as you pointed out, just how all the chief justices got onto the court while Trump was in office. What people need to keep in mind is as polarity in this country continues to skyrocket and stay, Congress and the Senate are going to become less and less able to do much of anything at all, which is why there's been so much of a focus on the courts, not just the Supreme Court, but just the federal court system in general. Biden actually has installed a lot of people in federal court seats. And so this battle is going to continue to go. And so this is what we really need to pay attention to. And this is why we need to pay attention to local politics, municipalities where police laws and regulations actually get controlled. And you talk about how the Supreme Court's playing dumb. You go down to a smaller level, police get away with killing people because they're all part of the same ticket. They're, all the prosecutors and the defendants and the judges and the police chiefs, they all are in the same friend group basically, and they look out for one another. And so something as arbitrary as you pointed out at the beginning, you being able to sue someone for $10,000 if they even drove someone to an abortion appointment. And so again, this is completely arbitrary. There's absolutely no arguing it. However, we're moving further away from litigation in Congress and the Senate and more to, courts deciding final outcomes and keeping cases going for years, even decades. So
no, you're not wrong. And you're right. Biden is putting in judges, but so far he hasn't had a spot on the Supreme Court. We don't know if Breyer is going to retire. This is how it works. Trump gets 4 years, he gets 3 justices. Biden gets 4 years, maybe he gets none. That's sort of the way it works. And I'm gonna go off a little bit on what I was talking about yesterday. I'm mad, as I think a lot of people should be, but I think that you really have to make sure that you're mad at everyone who deserves it. I'm obviously mad at Donald Trump for putting these justices on there. I'm mad at them for lying about what they would do when they got on the court, but I'm also mad at the people that helped them along the way. So people like Susan Collins, who pretended that Kavanaugh was something that he wasn't, but also people like Dianne Feinstein. So I was reminded by Scott Hetchinger on Twitter, when Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearing ended, Dianne Feinstein hugged Lindsey Graham and said the hearing was one of the best she'd been involved in. Like a week before the election, Amy Coney Barrett sat there and refused to answer any questions, got onto the court anyway, even though the Republicans had said that that sort of thing wasn't acceptable, and Dianne Feinstein was hugging Lindsey Graham. So there's a lot of people that are responsible for this and also responsible for doing something about it, because as we said yesterday, this is not an unsolvable problem. When we talk about reforming the Supreme Court, some people talk about that as breaking the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court is broken. And to make that really clear, what we have right now is a supermajority of conservatives on the Supreme Court. They're put there by presidents. Do you remember the last time a Republican president actually won an election with the support of the people, the popular vote? If you went back to that time, you'd have to wait half a decade before the MCU started. It is so long ago. And despite their complete, what's that?
Reagan, the last Republican.
Well, Bush in 2004 was able to, not in 2000, but in 2004, way back in 2004. And yet they have a supermajority. They cannot get the people to support them, but the system is set up in a way that they can still have overwhelming power. So what are you gonna do? Are you just gonna like leave that there? Say, I guess there's nothing we can do for the next 50 years? There is something we can do. There's something the Democrats in the Senate can do. There's certainly stuff that Biden can do. They're choosing not to act. They're surrendering in the face of a system that is fundamentally broken, that cannot deliver to the people who actually have the majority.
I think that they don't really view it as their fight. In such a way that I think it's such a big task and such a big undertaking. There's something in a subconscious layer that's like, this is the next generation's fight. This isn't really what I came here to do. I came here to stabilize Obamacare. I came here to, maybe add a little bit of more regulations to the system that I know and that I'm familiar with. And so, but again, the unfortunate problem with that is all these giant, literal possible extinction level problems that we're facing are just left on the back burner for us when we're 50. You know what I'm saying? Like we're in our late 20s, early mid 30s now, and we won't really be able to get to it until we're 50 and 60 and can get the reins. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, based on how they're acting, I feel like you're right, but they're dead wrong. It's not next generations. Like there's not gonna be a next generation if they don't fight now. And by the way, look, I'm jumping to like, expanding the Supreme Court or getting rid of the filibuster and actually passing laws, but you don't need to go that far. There's great suggestions online. Ellie Mistel, friend of the show, says Biden should hire doctors under federal authority. They could be paid for privately to get around the Hyde Amendment, and should send them to Texas to make sure that women can actually exercise their rights. I would also send them to a bunch of other states where effectively Roe v. Wade has been dead for some time. Adrienne Lawrence said she's wondering if, as commander-in-chief of the military, Biden could order military doctors in Texas to perform abortions for civilians on military bases. She doesn't know for sure if that's possible, and she is the expert, but he could look into that. There are certainly things that could be done even short of expanding the court. And so when Biden sends out a press release saying we're gonna fight for your rights, I can't help but see earlier today their fight to continue the federal eviction moratorium. They decided they're not gonna do that anymore. They said when the Supreme Court knocked it down that they would, and they just gave up. So now they're saying they'll fight for women's abortion rights. Well, are they gonna give up in a week? When they do, will there even be a news cycle about it?
Right, hopefully a new news cycle goes over so people forget. I mean, it has to be that they're succumbing to some type of pressure, because it's not as if the entire country, and especially certain regions of the nation, aren't constantly crying out. It's not as if there aren't politically active organizations on the ground all over the country. It's just who has the higher leverage, and they're just choking.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.